Hello, everybody. This is Zach's at it again. I'm your host, Zach Cooley, and it is an honor for me to be here with one of our great local artistic talents here in Withville from the Wohlfahrt Haus Dinner Theatre, Dylan White. Dylan, thank you so much for being on the podcast with me today.
Hey, Zach. Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Well, it is an honor to talk with you as I have known of your talents and been a supporter of your talents since you were in high school. We knew from very early on when you were getting standing ovations at school talent shows that you were going to go far and wide with your talents. And you're a great asset to the Wohlfahrt House. You've been all over the country.
Yes, sir.
Um, so we're very fortunate to have you back in Withville helping us out.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
So in this new show, which I love, by the way,
Thank you.
George invited me to see Tapestry of Fire and Rain, which is a very easy, very relaxed James Taylor, Carole King concert with some biographical, real dialogue interjected in between the songs. And I love Carole King as a songwriter. I think she's one
Yeah,
of the greatest songwriters of the 20th century. Well, of
absolutely.
all time, really, and certainly in the history of popular music. She's not, in my opinion, that great of a singer. Uh, James Taylor, I was not a fan of. I recognize his talent. I recognize uh, his contribution to Americana and again American popular music, but not a fan personally as a singer or a songwriter. However, I am a fan of Nicholas Landmesser, who is like the star of the Wohlfahrt House. He's in the lead of about every play I've ever seen there in the last several years because he is, as Sierra Noel Glosson put it, he is a master class at everything. He can act, he can sing, he can play anything, and he made James Taylor in this play, as did Cameron Crawford, who we'll talk about in a minute. They made each other sound better than the originals, in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I can, I just, and sorry to just jump in here, but
Oh,
you
please.
said so many things that are so true. Carole King, right? I think that Carole King is most widely known as a songwriter, more of a songwriter than a singer. But there is a real kind of authenticity to her voice that I think really landed her a lot of accolades throughout her career. And so the story that we tell in Tapestry of Fire and Rain really is just the story of their friendship, right? And so there's a bit of dialogue in the beginning of the show, and our director and the writer creator of the show, Lauren Alice Smith, put together the show beautifully, in my opinion. And the dialogue that she's quote unquote written is actually like they're all lines that have been spoken by James or Carol at one point. So maybe it was at a concert James uttered a line, so Lauren would have taken that line, and if it fit with another line that James said at another concert, she would have made it the next sentence of his dialogue, right? So Lauren really, has spent the last, to my understanding, really last like year and a half, if you can believe it, just doing a deep dive on these two, researching them, studying them, listening to every song that they've ever written, trying to understand who they were, not only as musicians and as artists, but as people, right? As people, and then ultimately as friends. So the show, in my opinion, is just a beautiful expression of their friendship. So the first act, you get some of that lovely kind of dialogue back and forth, where you get to see their budding relationship grow into a strong friendship. And then in the second act opens with, ladies and gentlemen, introducing Carole King, and we get to see snippets from some of their most iconic concerts throughout the years, because they obviously did perform quite a bit throughout the years together.
Mm-hmm.
And so we get to see that in the second act, and it's just such a beautiful, again, I know I keep going back to this phrase, but it's such a beautiful expression of that authentic love that they had for one another and have for one another.
Yes, and there was nothing, everybody, when you're looking at biographical content, they're looking for how salacious can we get this? How
sure.
How much can we delve into their personal lives and their proclivities and scandal and things like that. And there was none of that between Carole King and James Taylor. They were just two creative minds who happened to meet as souls, as friends, and they stayed that way. They're still that way, well over 50 years on. And that was beautifully captured. I'm going to borrow your word, beautiful, because it was beautifully captured by another local talent that we have, Lauren Alice Smith, who is the partner of Nicholas Landmesser. Is that correct?
Yeah, they've been together for many years, over a long time. Long time they've been together.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I look at Nick and Lauren as like the first lord and lady of the Wohlfahrt House, if you will. So
yeah, they definitely do a lot. They wear many hats for sure.
So Lauren has written and directed this beautiful show. I'm going to quit using the word beautiful now. I feel like we're both being redundant here.
I know, it's the song, right? It's just stuck in your head.
but it really is, and it's very relaxed. It's very easygoing. It's not overdone. It's not like you didn't stretch it out over 2 hours, because everything that needed to be said was done in 80 minutes, and it was just, I mean, I was very booked up, and George texted me, and he said, would you and your family like to come see Fire and Rain, or Tapestry of Fire and Rain? We would love to have you. And I thought, well, I can do it this Sunday for a matinee, because I have a kid that's in school, so I have to work it in on the weekends.
Right.
So I thought, there's no way he's going to get me in that soon. And George, being the great friend that he is, I said, can we come this Sunday? And he said, come on. And we got there, and it was a good crowd, but it wasn't sold out, so it wasn't, it wasn't jam-packed. It was real easy to just breeze in and breeze out, and it was just a real breezy, lighthearted, very poignant show. And the fact that it's done by our local talents, starring in, writing and directing, with Nick and Lauren respectively, I was just very impressed. And
I think that you hit a beautiful point there, where you're talking about the relaxed environment. That was something that we were really hoping to achieve with this.
Mm-hmm.
We do. At this point, I can't even keep track of how many shows we do a year down there. We've got sort of what we call the main stage shows, which are our big productions: Oklahoma, Motown Sound, Christmas, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we're working toward a world in which we're peppering in these other sort of smaller events, smaller engagements throughout the year to sort of appeal to a wider audience. Not everybody wants to come and see Annie or Oklahoma, right? And frankly, we're all sort of multifaceted performers. There's lots of us down there that are actor, musician, singer, dancer. We sort of do it all, and so it's nice to be able to spread our wings and not just be like, oh, well, you're an actor. You're always an actor. Well, today I get to be a piano player, which I love. I love playing, and I rarely get to do that anymore. So I was grateful that they invited me in to direct the show musically, and then also subsequently play the show. So that's been just a real kind of joy that I don't get to experience a lot. But, with all the excitement and all the energy and all the, jam-packed crowds and et cetera that we have for our main stage shows, for this show, not that we don't want a jam-packed crowd, obviously we want that every night, but for this show we were going for a much lighter touch, just kind of a casual evening with Carole King and James Taylor, it's pleasant. You mentioned before the legacy, the sort of lasting legacy, the good of the goodness of the two of them, just as human beings. And I think that we hit on some of their even struggles really nicely in the show. James Taylor struggled with addiction for the majority of his life, and we do deal with that in the show, but it isn't a focus because it isn't the focus of his life, nor is it the focus of his art, right? So we like to capture the love that they shared for one another. And yeah, just make it a really kind of easygoing, fun, exciting night for the audience.
Well, and I think that's why James Taylor and Carole King are adored today as a whole. I think that's why their songs are so successful, because they taught that their lyrics are what we talk about on a day-to-day basis. And
Absolutely.
they're just good people. And I had no idea till I saw the show that James Taylor wrote Carolina on My Mind because his dad was professor of medicine at UNC in Chapel Hill. He grew up in part of his childhood in Chapel Hill.
Yeah.
So that's not that far from us. He's kind of halfway one of us, a Southern boy.
He's almost a hometown boy, isn't
Yes. So, we can, people here can relate to that. And
Absolutely.
And when I was out in the lobby chatting with some people, they were echoing the same sentiments as I was, because they said Carole King was a brilliant songwriter. She was not that good of a vocalist, but that girl is a good singer, and what a thrill it must have been to have, because let me back up and digress a little bit here. George was kind enough to mention when he introduces me, as he always does, he did not introduce me as a newspaper reviewer. He introduced me as a playwright, which I'm not technically yet because it's not published. But I have written a play about the Dusty Springfield album, Dusty in Memphis, which was recorded in 1969 as sort of the first white soul record, if you will.
Yeah.
And Carole King wrote half the songs on that album. So
absolutely.
So I wrote a book about with the 50th anniversary of Dusty in Memphis. And when I wrote that book, I said, well, as a treat to myself for finishing this project, I'm going to go see Beautiful when it tours, and I never made it. So I'm going in about 3 weeks with another friend of mine down to Winston-Salem and see a local theater production of Beautiful. And I'm so excited, and what a thrill it must have been for you guys to get Cameron Crawford, who actually played Carol in Beautiful when she was in her hometown of Memphis. What a thrill that must have been.
Cameron is just such a delight. She is just such a delight. She came in on day one of rehearsal and, had a big smile on her face and kind of waved awkwardly to everyone as they walked into the room. She was the first one there, before we had even gotten there to turn on the lights. In fact, she showed up on day one. Just, she's not only professional and kind, she's, as you pointed out, she's gorgeous and talented. And we do feel very lucky to have her. I'm so excited. The commentary has been like, I'm sure you're familiar with Allie Bales, who we're also very excited to have back down at the. It's been a wonderful homecoming, between me and Allie and everybody kind of coming back.
Allie and Donnie are doing great things with the Millwall Theater. God bless them.
They sure are. So, the town of Whitfield is excited to have Allie and Donnie back, and the Wohlfahrt House is just elated to have Allie back, So the day before we opened the show, Allie and I were sitting out in the audience, and there was a little rehearsal going on the stage, and I turned to Allie and I said, "Do we get to keep her? Does she is she going to come back for more things?" And Allie said, "Oh, I hope so." So we're obviously we would love to have her come back and do more things, but she's just she fulfills the role of Carole King so beautifully. And I even said to her, "Please go and do this. Please go and do this elsewhere. Go do this in big places where you can make lots of money because you're so fabulous and you absolutely deserve it." So yeah, I mean, she is a sparkling talent. It's been a delight to work with her, and I feel so grateful to have been able to meet her in this capacity.
And the reason I wanted to talk to you specifically for this particular podcast is because you are among, in addition to Lauren and Nick, who I understand are imports to Withville, but they've been here long enough. They're one of our own now. So I consider them local talent. And of course, George, who is absolutely amazing. I have been doing reviews off and on for Wohlfahrt House for my entire career of almost 20 years. And George has, from day one, worn every hat in Wohlfahrt House, for all the way from artistic director to waiter, and he still wears it to this day. Set designer, actor, director, producer, costume designer, cook, whatever you can think of. He's done it. And he wanted, I asked him, I said, this is kind of different for Withville. Like, that is something, like, beautiful is something I would want to see come to Wohlfahrt House right away. But most people, you wouldn't see in Withville jumping to see something like beautiful. So I was glad to see it. So what made you want to bring it? What made you want to bring it to Withville? And he said, I've always been a fan of Carole King, and I got together with Lauren, and she was a big Carole King fan, and she wanted to. Somebody had sent him, I think, something about Carole King and James Taylor, and he said, if we could mesh this together. And he went to Lauren, and Lauren kind of molded this whole big, beautiful piece, mishmashing all these things together, which is ironically how I wrote the Dusty play. Just took actual dialogue from actual interviews and of the people that were there, and building and using that as between scene dialogue, and in between the scenes have my wife sing a track from the album, and kind of gel that together. And I see that that's what Lauren has done so cohesively, and it's a great show. But with all due nods to George and Lauren and Nick, I wanted to talk to you first of all, because we have known each other forever, and I have always been an admirer of your talents, as you know. And you are a Withville boy, born and bred, and you are arranging and underscoring and playing piano to Carole King songs. You are playing piano to Carole King songs. I say that twice deliberately because, I mean, what greater compliment can that be? Is that intimidating for someone of your talents, or is it just like, this is a challenge that I've got to do?
Oh, yeah, it's always intimidating. So when I was growing up, I took piano lessons, and I was stubborn as a mule, and I got to the point, I always wanted to learn how to accompany myself, and I got good enough to do that, and then I stopped listening to my piano teachers. So I dropped out of lessons at that point and just sort of went around. And my entire sort of adult journey has been in finding my place within the entertainment industry. So, I went to school originally for musical theater performance, which is where you get the acting, singing, dancing thing. And then most recently, I actually just got back from Boston. I went to the Berklee College of Music to get a bachelor's degree in music business with a concentration in Appalachian roots music. So I was really excited to come back and sort of utilize some of those new skills that I picked up maybe at Berkeley, picked up along the way, because I think that, me 5 years ago would have had a much more difficult time in playing the Carole King stuff than I do now. And, there are times even now that I feel like I'm hanging on by my fingernails, but, it's a joy to do, and it's a joy to play, and it is, it's exciting every night,
As an arranger of a Carole King musical and James Taylor and underscore, what does that entail?
Yeah, so, essentially Lauren provided me with a script and then a list of songs, and she had an idea of oh, we're going to call this section Carol's Hits Medley, and we're going to put all of these songs together, et cetera, et cetera. So, a little bit of how do we get from one key to another, making it sound interesting? How do we keep the momentum flowing in the show without, breaking to go to a whole new time signature, for instance, so things like that. And then, underscoring was simple. She gave me 2 songs and she said, I want them to slowly blend over the course of the show. I want it to start off that it's, Fire and Rain and Carole King's Tapestry just being played independently when the 2 people are on stage speaking. And then over time, I want the 2 songs to meld and become one song. That happened to have been a relatively simple task, just because James Taylor and Carole King write in keys that are happen to be related, ironically. Mm-hmm. So, it was relatively simple to do, to put them together and make it all sound cohesive. And then, this was one of my first experiences really directing a show this big. And, I had Nick right there beside me the whole time. Nick was such an invaluable resource to me, and, where do you think this should go next? Or, oh, does this sound okay? Or what do you think about that? Nick's ear is second to none. And I would trust musically, I would trust him implicitly, and so I think that it was a challenge to put it together. But again, the support that I had was overwhelming, to get the job done, so to speak. And yeah, so I was excited to take it on, and I'm excited to direct more shows as we move through the year.
And you get to do background for Nick and Cameron, which ain't bad either.
Not a bad gig, yeah, not a bad gig.
So you will be doing some directing in the Motown shows and Christmas shows coming up?
To be determined. That I'm going to be directing some other stuff throughout the year. The problem is that it's a little hard to direct when you're also in the show. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, I think that George is trying to help me move into that role a little bit to, build a resume, get ahead, et cetera. And so I think that the shows where I'm not going to be singing and dancing, he's going to sort of try to afford me the opportunity to step into more leadership type roles. And then if I am singing and dancing, then, well, you'll see me singing and dancing. So,
and he's a generous type of guy that way.
Absolutely. I mean, he would give you the shirt off of his back. Just a quick side note, I am so grateful for George in my life. George has been such a valuable friend to me, I can't speak highly enough of him. That place wouldn't be what it is without him. Just a wonderful asset, a wonderful friend, a wonderful mentor. I couldn't have asked for a better boss.
And another one who is talented at everything.
Can do anything. Yeah. The other day, he started playing the piano, and I was like, George, what are you doing? And I didn't know you could play the piano. And he's like, oh, yeah, I play a little bit. Oh, well, who knew that, George?
Yeah.
That's really cool. Good to know.
Yes.
So, just a great guy,
And he's been equally kind to me as a reviewer, so, we're glad to have what you do. Even though I'm a $12 a week newspaper columnist, he makes me feel like I'm somebody important, and he said, you come anytime and you do a show and your family's welcome, and he's been like family to me, and
Yeah.
I can't, again, I agree with you, I can't say enough about him, and I can't express my gratitude enough for his friendship and the difference he's made in my career as a writer, as a reviewer.
Absolutely.
And his encouragement for me to do things like playwriting. He was very encouraging and had, me send it to him, and he obviously thought enough of it that he would mention it to a crowd that it hasn't even been published yet. But he knows that my wife is a talented singer, and he encouraged. I don't know anything about playwriting. I don't know how it's supposed to flow, but he's encouraging me in that way and to step into that role, and that's just part of his generosity.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, Dylan, thank you for giving me so much of your time. It's been an honor to talk with you today. And thank you for all you do for Whitfield in terms of the arts.
Yes, sir. Thank you for all you do for Whitfield. This has been delightful. And just a quick plug. Next up, we do have, If I Could Turn Back Time, it's going to be a wonderful 80s review show. After that, we have Motown Sound, going to be excellent Motown. We've done that show before. The 80s show is a new one, so we're excited to see it. Motown we've done sells out every time we put it up, so people should book tickets early. And then obviously we have Oklahoma and Christmas coming up later in the year. But it's an exciting season, and we would love to see everybody out.
I'm looking forward to all 4 of those shows. Oklahoma was one of the first shows I reviewed, I think, in 2006 or 7, and I'm looking forward to it coming back. I have not seen the 80s show or the Motown. I'm thrilled for both. They're both 2 of my favorite kinds of music, and I plan to be there I plan to be there with bells on for all 4 of them.
You better bring your bells, Zach. We need all the bells we can get.
I will bring my bells for sure. You can count on me.
We sure appreciate you.
Well, thank you, Dylan. It was great to talk to you as always, and thank you for all you do.
Thank you, sir.